Hi folks, welcome to Dogs, Trains, Rail Reports. I have another update on Southern Railway 722's restoration. As you know, the project is currently 3 months behind the original completion date estimate of early 2026. Parts shipments from Strasburg are still in progress, but the crew at the Dillsboro yard have been doing any work they can until the needed parts arrive. The Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad, GSMR's sister railroad, has been selected to build the new water tank for 722's tender. Meanwhile, the guys in Dillsboro have completed the frame for 722's tender. The July to August completion estimate is fast approaching, but several comments on my 722 restoration overview video, as well as people I've talked to, seem to think that the restoration could take as long as early 2027. But how does my timeline compare? Well, I rode past the Dillsboro yard on June 17, 2026, and spotted 722 sitting outside of the shop. This image isn't perfectly clear, so here's my project status picture to compare. Safe to say, my July 2026 estimate won't hold up. Most of the progress over the past 3 months has been on the tender and individual components. That means we are likely to see rapid assembly of the main locomotive once all those parts are finished and added back on. Comparing it to 1702's restoration, it took around 2 months for 1702 to go from looking like this to fully complete. However, 1702 was already converted to burn oil and had the right size tender in good condition. 722 will require more work. Reworking my timeline based on the last known status of the project, potential delays on part shipments from Strasburg, as well as the construction of a new tender water tank and possible delays, we're looking at around 4 to 7 months of work until 722 can run again. So it's actually looking like the project could be nearing completion by November or December 2026. While these delays do mean that the project's completion and steam test runs of 722 will be pushed back into early 2027, going the extra mile to ensure that major parts are brand new or perfectly restored to like-new condition means that 722 will ultimately be more reliable and run smoothly for years to come. I will continue to post updates regarding 722's restoration. In the meantime, check out the full 722 playlist for all the updates leading up to this point. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.